This is so important when we talk about women who lead, is that we need each other. So when I look at you guys and I look at so many other women throughout the world, I'm like, you're not my competition.
Exactly.
You're my community. And, and when I empower you, it empowers me. Well, today on the show, I have two very special guests. I have Calver and Valerie Elliot here talking about women who lead. Welcome, ladies.
Lovely to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. This is a much needed conversation talking about women leadership roles in all kinds of different areas. We're going to talk about women in leadership. So both of you ladies are very established in ministry and very established in the church, and have a voice in the church, so to speak, and have been in ministry for a very long time. And but both of you come from very different backgrounds and very different perspectives as stepping into roles of leadership. So Anne, tell me a little bit about yourself and actually what it's been like in your journey, because you didn't know necessarily that you were a leader, called to leadership. Is that right?
Absolutely, Christy. And I think I still wrestle with it a bit. So coming from a background where I very much thought that the male was the head of the home and the head of the church, and just actually women didn't really have a space to lead. And so I suppose kind of growing up with that, I didn't entertain it as a thought that I might lead. But then I found myself at Bible college, and that was a very clear word from the Lord to be in Bible college. But then I thought at the time that was to meet my husband.
Wow.
When we stepped into Youth for Christ to lead a gap year program together after college. And even then, I think, you know, I kind of felt he was going to take the front lead and I would support him in it. And we were in a church where women weren't leading. But I would find that I would just naturally take authority and I would naturally step in those early days, nearly 20 years ago.
Wow. And so, Anne, did you actually, because if you didn't have a model for it, it's interesting, isn't it? The modeling, like if you are in a structure, denomination, or a movement where there's not models of women leading, it actually doesn't even, something that we would consider.
Yes.
And so you're in that context. And so when the Lord began to speak to you, is that something that you really struggled with?
Yes, definitely, Christy, like big time, I would say. And I think actually people were starting to notice stuff in me that I hadn't noticed in myself. But it was really an encounter with the power of the Holy Spirit that led me fully into leadership. So I was on holiday. I'd been on holiday to the same place for about 18 years and was sat on the bed just reading from Acts chapter 2. And that bit where it says, even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit, and my sons and my daughters will prophesy. And it was just like, it just spoke so strongly to me, and I felt like electricity running from head to toe over and over again, like waves of it. And I felt the Lord just say, and you, Anne, and you, step up, step up. And it was soon after that I explored church leadership more.
And then you begin to step into it a bit more. But it was a process for you.
It was.
While on the other hand, Valerie, when you began, tell me a little bit about your story, how you stepped into leadership.
I always had a strong sense.
So you felt like you were called to leadership?
Yes, right from when I was younger, when I was a teenager, always found myself in the midst of it, leading something maybe on my own, usually just people gathering, leading friends. We go away on a retreat. I'm the one who's asked to lead the whole session and the whole time there. And then I just knew it. The Lord had laid on my heart that he wanted to use me publicly, and use me to, be a blessing to people and change lives and draw people into him. And so I always had that picture of serving the Lord. I did not know how it would unfold, but I kept seeing myself on the forefront.
But did you actually, Valerie, did you have any models of women in leadership that you looked to?
Before I stepped in, I used to see people like obviously Joyce Meyer and the rest of them. But then when it was time for me to step in, I saw there was a lady who ended up mentoring me, who, when the Lord had laid on my heart that, Valerie, this is what I'll have you do. It's not a church. It's not in the church, but it's an independent thing. I would have you do. There was a lady who, a lady minister, I had been for her retreat. My life, was really blessed. When the Lord then laid the vision on my heart, I went to her
Right.
And then said to her, I will need some advice and guidance. And she
Right.
offered to mentor me.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because both of your walks are so very different,
Yeah.
two very different contexts of, God calling
Yeah.
and having to step into leadership role,
Yeah.
but also very different. Like, you, Anne, of not even having in your world, so to speak, we want to honor the church. We, of course, want to honor leadership. I think this is very important when we talk about
definitely.
women who lead, that this is not about, our rights-oriented deal, but more like God's advancing his kingdom, and how do we as men and women and children all become a part of that mission and do that in a healthy way. So, Anne, I would say to you, I would ask you, like, if you're in a world actually where God is beginning to speak to you and say, I feel called to this, but there's no context for that to actually play out, how did you step into those acts of obedience of what God's saying, but not necessarily the structure supporting that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting because I felt like it was affirmed in what I was doing nationally. So what was happening with Youth for Christ, there was a space for me to minister. But what was happening locally was I don't think in the church, in the local situation, that I can step up here. And I don't think that they will recognise it. And what was interesting was that the Lord started to make a way that I didn't force an agenda or have to fight. I mean, I was blessed in that. But he started to open doors. So Gavin became ordained within the Baptist church.
And Gavin's your husband.
And Gavin's my husband. Yeah, thank you, Christy. And he said, well, because I'm now Baptist ordained, we need to move into a Baptist church. So that moved us across churches, because you don't just step and leave a church for no reason. So there was a clear door there. And as we then stepped into that church, the leaders in there started to call me into more leadership. Right. And so it was like a natural progression that began to happen. And then soon after that, I said, I think I should get ordained. Yeah. And everyone went, well, it's not rocket science. Yes, of course you should.
Did you feel, but was that did that take a lot of faith? I mean, because that's so outside of your comfort zone and what you actually believed, right? And so God's changing things in you. God's opening up some doors, but also you're having to push through what's comfortable, I would think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I really wasn't sure whether that was okay, maybe just alongside a man, or whether I was prepared to take ultimate authority. I wasn't sure, and the idea of team leadership was much more appealing. But then subsequently I've had to think, is that just my own fear?
Right, yeah.
Or is that, is that the Lord?
Right. And Valerie, for you, is very different because you actually started when you felt like God was leading you into ministry. You already felt like you were a leader. You already knew you were called into ministry. But you started something that was actually outside of the church. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. When the Lord laid it on my heart that the question was, would you gather people and I would come? And I just thought, okay, Lord, what does that look like?
Really good.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's because I had to understand, why is this different from, just the usual church service? And he just said, gather people, it's all denominations, everyone's welcome to come. I started with women, naturally, because as a lady, it was easy to just get women involved. And I went to my pastor and then just said to him, this is what the Lord's laid on my heart. And he said to me, go for it. This is what the Lord said to you, go for it. He did understand it wasn't to do within the church. So that was good. And then, like I said, I had this mentor as well. But then I still had to, by faith, obey God. By faith, understand the vision and, help understand what this really meant. Do the first retreat, see how that's unfolded. Yeah. It was a blessing because it was not what I thought it would be.
It never is it?
No.
Ministry never is.
It wasn't what I thought it would be. It was better. Yeah. It was more amazing. Wow. But it just wasn't what I thought it would be. I mean, I went through in my notes thinking, okay, usually, you see people teaching, but it didn't work that way. I didn't work with my notes. Holy Spirit said, I told you gather them. I want to speak. So play this by ear. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
So and that's all it's been. It's going on 10 years now. I've had to just follow the heart of God. That's what it is for his people, because the gathering is his. So he said, gather them. Yeah. We gather, and it has to be what he wants.
What I really appreciate about what you both just said, actually, and I think this is really key, very important, is that because this is a conversation that we need to have, both of you absolutely believe in the church.
Definitely.
Love the church.
100%.
Definitely.
And actually believe in the structure of the church.
Yeah.
Yes.
And both of you went to the leaders of the church
Yes.
to get, I mean, I would use the language blessing. That's such a Christian word, actually. But I would say it's very important that we honor, let me use the word honor, that we honor the leaders that are in place, that even when God speaks to us, that we respect that and we honor them and we say, hey, I think God is saying this. And I find it interesting that both of you actually did that. Did you find that really difficult? Because I think a lot of women find that quite intimidating. To go to the leadership and share, hey, I feel like this is something that God might be asking me to do. Did you find that really difficult, Anne?
Yeah, I think I did find that hard because it was a vulnerable thing to do,
Yeah.
to say, okay, this is what I'm sensing. It's like, here's something really precious that I feel God's put in my hands, and what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
You know, but actually God was really good with that. But I think there's moments where we guard our heart maybe too much on that, and actually it's that step of courage that goes, no.
Yeah.
Come on, I'm going to lay this down before your throne and trust you that you're going to come through, Lord.
Yeah, because it's so vulnerable. It is vulnerable. It's something that is precious. It's something that, God is showing us. And what if you have the fear of, what if I miss God? You have the fear of, what if I do this wrong? What if I have the fear of, what if they reject me? And or you have the fear of, what if I can't do what God's called me to do? And what about for you, Valerie?
For me, as much as I already had a relationship with my pastor where I was accountable, I usually would go and share, this is what the Lord's laying on my heart. It was still nerve-wracking because I'm still trying to understand the yes I've said to God. And so expecting someone else to understand the yes. I mean, they were not there when I had the conversation with the Lord. What am I saying? But I did say to the Lord, it's extremely important to me that my pastor is on board with this.
Yeah.
So, I believe he's going to be fine with it, but I just need you to just make it. And going to him was fine.
Yeah.
And he just said to me, go for it,
That's really actually quite encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you both are from different places. Because I found actually, I think it's really wrong to demonize men in leadership and actually put everything on the men. I think it takes both genders to actually come to the table, using the word table, but actually come together and actually work things through and talk things through. And actually, it's okay to believe differently. Like I'm like, if you actually don't believe that I, as a woman, should lead, that's okay with me. You're probably not the person to come and hear me speak then.
No,
or I'm probably not your leader.
Yeah.
That's fine. And actually, it's probably better if you leave. That's actually what I felt like. If you don't feel called or you can't come under my leadership, then it is best that you lead. And I think just having that conversation and being able to hear, and I think this is very important as women, it's very important to hear from men of them being able to say, I believe in you, I just don't believe in that theologically, for women to head lead, and for us as women to say, okay, well, let's just agree to disagree.
Yes, I think
Or
so.
I think it has to be both, and I think that's the power of the church and power of us coming together, of having women in leadership in different roles, is that let's just agree to disagree. Like, I don't want to waste my time. This is what I love, actually, about both of you and your stories, is that I think it's a waste of time in anything in life, especially ministry, to spend it trying to convince people that what I'm doing is the Lord.
Yes.
Like, that's exhausting. Like, is it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because he will make a way, won't he? And he will fight. He will fight for you.
Well, he has made a way.
Yes.
Exactly.
He has made a way. Like, look at
Exactly.
what you both are doing now.
Yeah.
But the journey to get there is obviously huge. So, Anne, what are some of the things that you, like the minute that you say yes to God, is this not true? The minute that we say, okay, God, sure, I'll do that. Not really knowing the whole picture. But the minute that we say yes, it's like all of our insecurities come to the surface, and we all have them. And if somebody says they don't, they're lying, of course. But Anne, for you, like, what was it? Like, what happened with you?
Yeah. So I would say, Christy, that fear has been something that's been huge in my life, and I still wrestle with it now. And we wrote a book, Gavin and I, on called Game Changers, and it was all about Moses and his journey, towards the Promised Land. And it was so helpful because looking at his journey of fear, and actually he doesn't get many words from the Lord, does he? Just go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And I felt like, okay, God, you've only given me a little bit. Can you not give me more of this picture? Can you not tell me more? But it unfolds slowly, doesn't it? And in his timing, and it was just like, no, Anne, you've got to trust me with this piece, and then step and just keep stepping, and then I'll reveal more to you. But fear has been really hard, and I've had to literally face it head on and just go, I am not going to back down in fear. I'm not going to retreat in fear. I'm going to advance in faith, and I'm going to keep advancing in faith. And that's like my biggest hurdle.
And do you still have that now, Anne?
I do, definitely. And fear of what people think, fear of failure, fear of being overwhelmed by the responsibility. Yeah.
Just fear in general.
Fear.
I know, it's all of us, actually.
I know, and I just feel like the Lord's
So
like,
true.
and I'm the great I am, you are just you. Let the great I am work through who you are. And it's okay, you'll be okay.
Yeah. You'll be okay. Like, if I
If
just
it's
know,
me.
I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right. And what about for you, Valerie?
I would say the same thing, fear. Because whatever the case, you haven't been there yet. I haven't been in the picture, the full picture that the Lord may have shown.
Right.
Sometimes he shows you a bit further down to give you enough faith to walk up.
Yeah.
But then it's fear all the way, because every time it's a new experience. Like I said, I went in with notes, and he says, put those away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So every time I'm opening my
like,
mouth and thinking, what is coming out? But then I realized that the fact that I had to continue to get the word in and know the word and really understand the word and embrace the word and know his presence and know his spirit and then trust him.
Yes.
You know, so that you push past the fear, you feel it, but you know, Lord, this is what you want to do. This is how you want things done. And then singing, I did not like singing.
And you're a worship leader as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that came after then.
Yeah.
I didn't like singing, was afraid
What don't
of
you
singing.
do, Valerie? That's really the question. What doesn't Valerie do?
So it was fear of what people would think about my voice, fear of what people would think about what was happening. Because as much as I had a mentor, and she mentored other people who were doing, you know, their own ministries as well, but I still didn't feel I had enough of maybe an example of, you know, it wasn't as common.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this, and yes, I can see other people doing this, but somehow I'm still in my own bubble.
Yeah.
Trusting God and walking this thing. And so fear.
Step by step. You know what's interesting is that, to be honest with you, if I were to think about for myself and insecurity, it would be fear as well.
Yeah.
So fear.
Yeah, like the more but for me, the fear was always, it was never about that this wouldn't work. Like I've never had a fear like things won't work. I don't know, maybe that's just a crazy side of me.
great.
It's never been that fear. The fear that the enemy's used on me is that if I were to actually do what God had called me to do, then the enemy would take my children.
Oh, wow.
That was my fear. So I think for all of us, I think it's important to know that we all have things that we have to push through and obstacles, and the enemy will always, fear's never God.
Yes.
It's never God. For all of us, it will be very different, isn't it? It will be the fears that we face, the insecurities that we face, and the things that we actually have to push through, because we're all so different. We're all so wired different.
And you said recently, Christy, I think something to me that the Lord, you know, that the enemy will play a record over.
Yeah.
And I found that really helpful, because it's like he's not creative, but he's consistent, and he will play it and play it and play it. Yeah. And and it's like, oh no, I am not going to walk in that lie. I'm not.
Yeah, no, that's such a good reminder, because the enemy can't create, right? So he just takes what's, you know, he's really good at reminding us what we've done wrong and where we've been wrong, and he's really good at showing us our weaknesses. And he doesn't have to use new things, because the old things still work, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing over and over again. So, and for you, what about, like, what would you say actually to a woman who feels called to leadership, but she's maybe in a structure of what you come from, and there's not it's quite there's not a lot of room, or there's not a lot of opportunity. What would you say to her?
Yeah, I would say you really need to know that you're called to be where you are, and that the Lord has said it's here. and now. And I would be kind of praying and fasting into that if I was really struggling with the structures, because as we've kind of already highlighted, we're not there to fight. We're not there to kind of force our agenda and try and manipulate things to get our own way. It's about, okay, Lord, if you are calling me, you need to show me how to step here. And so I'd be saying, actually, if there's no space to step, if there's no room, then Lord, show me where. Show me where else I need to tread.
And Valerie, what about you? What would you say to women who feel called? Because you're actually very good at having people already around you and discipling people and calling them into leadership. So what would you say to them in the context of where you're serving right now?
I usually would say to them, trust the God who put it in you. Because if you've recognized that there's something there you recognize as a call, then trust him as well. Just take that one step further and then obey. Just find out what's the first step. What's the first step? My first step was to go, share with my pastor. Got that. Take the next step and the next step. But it's trusting God. It's a journey of obedience and honor. So remember, it's a journey of obedience and honor. Obey God and then honor the process. Honor, the people in your life. Just honor. Obedience and honor, if they can remember that.
And if you could go back now, like what would you say, Valerie, to the young you? So when you first started ministry and you see now, especially so many things are changing and shifting and there's more opportunity. But what would you say to the young you?
I would say it's going to be so worth it. So worth it. You mentioned about the people that I'm, working alongside, mentoring and all that. The fruit of their lives is such a blessing to me. So, and just glory to God for that. So it's going to be so worth it. It's worth the challenge. It's worth pushing past the fear. It's worth it.
Is it so other people can know Christ and other people can
Christ.
Live their purpose and other people can get free. And so when you see that happen in the people that you're discipling and you're raising up, then you're like, oh, this is so worth it.
So fulfilling, yes.
So you would say to your younger self, just hang in there. Like, this is going to be worth it.
Keep going, don't give up.
But it's also going to probably play out different.
Yes, a whole lot different from what you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Anne?
I would say get over yourself a little bit.
Right.
Don't look to the right or the left. Just focus on him. And I would say you're not alone. You're not going to be alone. I think there's something about the fact, I remember sitting on the front row of a women's conference with you, and I remember the Lord saying to me, look to the right and left in this moment. And you were sat there, and my mentor, Kate Coleman, was sat there, and another amazing lady, Anne Coles, was sat there. And I just felt the Lord saying, I've put them there, Anne. They're there. And that's me with you for this season. And I just thought, we're not alone. He puts people where they need to be at the right time.
Absolutely. I actually want to go a little bit deeper and talk about some of the other challenges that we kind of addressed. Valerie, let's begin with you. The challenge of actually starting something that has never been done before or that isn't seen in the church already. What would you say to that, the challenge of that, and not having something exist, but you feel called to start something?
The challenge is people believing in, one of the challenges, people believing in what it is you're doing. Because I found that I was faced by people questioning, why are you doing this? You already come to church on a Sunday. What are you trying to do? Why do you have to do this? And I had to explain, my being in church is I'm fellowshipping as a child of God. This is where I serve. This is where I'm called. This is family. But this is me fulfilling destiny.
Right.
And so having to be able to know that for myself and then embrace that and continue to persevere, whether people fully understood it or not. Because the Lord will always provide those that, would support and would understand.
Right.
So you just.
But you also, as you shared before, you've already felt like you were a leader, that you were called to be a leader, and then it was just sort of stepping into that role. And for you, Anne, it was very different. And so some of the challenges of you stepping into something that really doesn't exist. So you have God saying one thing that you feel like is the Lord, right?
I do.
And then, and then you have the reality that nothing is existing for what you feel like God is saying. So how did you actually face that challenge and step into what God was leading you into?
I really think it's knowing why you're where you are, isn't it? And knowing what it is that you have that God said. And so I think that I've known all the way along that there's a transformation narrative in the background of my life. And so that God is wanting to do transformation in me, to do transformation in others. And that is very much in the church. And so my heart cry is to see the church transformed. So I think what I realised as I've gone on is that he will put me in situations that need to be changed, and it's okay if it's hard, because he'll put the other people around who will encourage that to happen. But I think it's knowing, isn't it, that you've been placed there to stand, and even if the barriers suddenly go up, even if the worship leader suddenly shuts you down, or the host doesn't release you in the way that you were hoping they would, it's just, okay, no, but I did take ground today and God was with me.
So you've experienced those things.
Yes.
You've absolutely experienced those things and we were saying it a bit earlier, because for you, Valerie, you're stepping into something and you're just trying to obey what God's saying to you. And it's a bit different and people are questioning it, right?
Yes.
But for you, Anne, you're saying, within that context, having it be a bit difficult, and the frustrating aspect of it, of maybe somebody wanting to say, yeah, we believe in you and we believe what God's saying to you, which is really common, by the way. I hear it all the time from women. I think this is one of the things that we could actually work on and get a bit better on in the church for both men and women, is that where men will say, or leadership will say, let's say that, we believe in you, whatever God's showing you, and go ahead and do it. But the minute that you actually step into it, it was sort of like, well, we actually say it, but we don't really do it.
That's it. Yeah. And they might be saying, you can do it, but do it over there, not near me.
Right. Yeah.
You can do it, do it outside of the church, not near me. And I think the challenge for us is sometimes, and it depends on your call, doesn't it? But actually, no, I'm going to stay put, or to come out of where it might be easy, and to move into spaces where it's hard. I know that's your experience as well, Christy, to address stuff that's some of the strongholds, really.
Yeah, and it's the truth is, it's not like it gets easier.
No.
So there's this illusion, like, oh, if I just get this position, then this is going to be so much easier. No, getting a position is the beginning of what's difficult.
That's so good.
And if God isn't placing you there, you don't want it. And I think that's the thing. If I could say to women, really honestly, leaders in general, if God is not leading you to where He is leading you, you will not have the ability to carry it. And so you want to step into what God's calling you to do, but make sure it's the Lord.
Yes.
It's almost like you both have said several times that where the Lord's leading you, He somehow makes a way.
Yes.
He just makes a way. So Valerie, tell me a little bit about the Vision Development Program that you have going.
Yeah, so the Vision Development Program is about taking people on a journey with God in regards to what He's put on their hearts. So the vision could be business, could be ministry, could be anything. But as long as it's a calling, I think I'm really interested in knowing that it's something is God. And so it's not just a course, as in teaching you the different guidelines, but getting you to a place of sensitivity, including the Lord in this process. So just learning what the vision is, embracing the vision, doing it with Him.
Right.
Yeah, it was the question I asked the Lord, why? Why do this when there are other courses out there? He said, because I want you to facilitate a journey between the visionary and me.
Wow, that's good. And when does that journey begin? Is there like a specific age or?
I would say once the person is maybe 16, I'm guessing, because that's when usually
they can
people
really
might feel,
hear from the Lord.
When they feel they also got time to step into it.
Right. So Valerie, for you, you were saying to me personally earlier how you felt like since you were married, stepping into leadership as a woman felt like it was a bit easier. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, it feels like, I mean, even till now, some people hearing, oh, you're married, it feels, okay.
Like they take a deep breath.
Yeah, right, okay, we can trust you. I'm not sure why. But I find that that's like a general thing. Before I got married, one thing that I was quite sure about was that there was this thing in me God was going to birth. I sensed leadership. I could, sense that in my heart. And so when I met my, husband now, my now husband, I mentioned it to him. Oh, you like me? Well, there's this part as well.
Right.
You know, it kind of had to come together because this is not just about me trying to do ministry, but a call, something that God had put in for his own purposes. So having to go with that. And so being married, for some people, feels like it endorses the ministry.
Right. Yeah.
Which can be a challenge for someone who's not married.
Right. Yeah. So that is interesting because the truth is, calling is not about being married. No. It's not like, will God call couples together to do ministry? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're married, does it matter actually that both are on the same page? Absolutely. Yeah. But it does not qualify you or disqualify you in your singleness of where God places you. And I think that's an illusion. Oh, I have to be married in order to be validated in the church.
Yes.
And how crazy is that, right? I mean, women were first at the womb, first at the tomb, you know, first to hear about the resurrection. Yeah. We wouldn't even know about the resurrection if it wasn't for women. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not a theologian. I don't want to be. My brain doesn't work like that. I'll leave that to the smart people. Yeah. But I think it's very important, and what you just said, Valerie, about you communicated to your now husband of saying, this is actually who I am. This is what I feel called to do. Yeah. Because I found actually that so many women, one, want to go into ministry and are about to get married, and that person, their fiance, doesn't really have the same vision. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I've also seen where many times and heard many times, which is kind of very heartbreaking, like if just in context, which so many people would be watching this show, and a woman would feel called to ministry, but her husband is like, no, that's not what we're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. And so have you ever heard of that before as well, Anne?
I've seen that particularly amongst some of the Bible college students that I've kind of mentored a bit and been involved with, and one of the key things I will say to them is, who are you dating and what exactly does that look like? What are the dreams that you're both carrying? What do you feel that God has said, and how is he going to work that out so that you both reach your potential? Because that's key, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very key actually. What about you, Valerie? What would you say to that?
Marriage is about two people, becoming one. And so if this is a part of you, a part of your life, a part of what God has for you, and both people can't embrace it, it's going to be a big challenge. So it's very, very important to communicate that, to talk about that, and to learn what that means. Because knowing it and it's unfolding in life, daily life, is a whole different thing as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say, and this is just the honest truth, I mean, ministry is hard enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ministry is hard enough. Marriage is hard enough. Like you combine those things, you don't want to add any more extra difficulty and conflict. And I would just say, actually, just the context of having women say, hey, listen, I'm married, but my husband doesn't want me in ministry. I get asked that question all the time. And, wanting to hear, well, just go do it anyways, because what God says is most important. And if God's leading you. And I just step back from that and say, wait a second here. Like you actually already made a covenant. And that covenant that you made in ministry, God does not have you forsake that covenant in order to do the ministry. And in other words, even if you have a dream inside of you, you have to honor your first covenant.
Absolutely.
And you're going to have to work that out. And it just means that you might, serve in a different way for now. And God may open up another door later. But I don't believe that God has us neglect or devalue or dishonor our first covenant in order to go do some ministry.
Absolutely.
And, which I am seeing and hearing, where women are saying, I got to have this and I should be able to do this. And
that's a big danger, isn't it? That it's I and it's what I want and where I can go and what I can fulfill. And that's not what we're a part of, is it? It's
not at all.
What he wants and his agenda through us. And we have to first honor him and then those relationships.
And I usually advise, like Mary and Joseph. Mary, was the one who the angel visited.
Absolutely.
And then the Lord had to speak to Joseph.
Yep.
So, hey, don't just go off and do it. Ask the Lord,
Right.
speak to Joseph.
Yeah,
that
and like-
husband is going to be
That's
able
so
to
good.
That husband,
speak to him.
actually the male, see, this is what I think is so important. This is all of us going together. Like if we could just catch this, like that example of Mary and
Yeah.
Joseph, like the thing about Joseph, not that we're an offense,
Yeah.
but Joseph was willing to bear the offense so that Mary could do what God had asked her to do.
Yeah.
And so when I see men in the church, which I have so many incredible relationships of men in the church that have been so empowering to me, I realize that's a gift, right?
Yeah,
It's such a
definitely.
gift.
Yeah.
But I also honor those Josephs. They're Josephs because they're bearing the offense of sort of like what they're going to hear because of them putting me on some platform or. Do you know what I mean?
I
Like we
do.
have to see it from both sides and have
Yes,
that
definitely.
conversation because it's not easy for anybody, I think, because you're shifting culture a bit, right?
So
It's not
good.
easy for any of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we have to allow each other to change, don't we? We have to
Right.
when we're entering into the marriage, it's like, you're not going to stay as you are.
Right.
You know, we're going to
Yeah, yeah,
continue
yeah.
to be transformed and we're going to continue to shift and we're going to have different seasons where
Yes.
one might advance and the other, and it's allowing
Right.
each other to grow and flourish. And,
Right.
And I think, we follow a God who calls us to surrender, to sacrifice, to lay down,
Yeah.
not to make it all about me, but to make it about Him.
Yeah.
And that's challenging.
So, ladies, in everyday life, because the truth is, in just walking this out, saying, "Oh, I have to push past fear, I have to push past insecurity," but the truth is, when it rises up inside of us, it's difficult,
Yeah.
and it's painful. It's again the dying to self, but it's also risky, isn't it? So, what have you actually, and when fear actually, kind of raises its head, when you feel like God's leading you somewhere, when fear, when insecurity, what's one of the ways, Anne, that you actually deal with that? How do you actually handle that?
So I've learned through the years to literally just throw myself on the Lord, and it's normally me and Him in some place where I'm weeping my face off and just literally going, God, really? Do I really have to? Or like, how am I going to make it? How is this going to happen?
Yeah.
And I can't. It's very much like the Psalms, just like, God. And just, I think that's taken me to a greater place of dependency and intimacy with Him, actually, through my weakness, through that insecurity. There's a deepening dependency, and that's then what's then carried me, able me to step out and go, okay,
Right.
I will stand on that rock, I will walk that path.
And what about you, Valerie?
For me, I would, do the same.
Yeah.
Create my space and just, let it go with
Right.
the Lord. But usually I'm crying out and just saying, Lord, remind me.
Yeah.
Remind me. Bring it back.
Yes.
Take me back to that place. Help me remember why. Help me remember what the yes was about. And I usually like to remember somewhere in Psalm 139, I think verse 16, where it says, all of my days were written before one of them came to be. And so I'm like, Lord, okay, sing it over me right now. Just what you wrote.
Right.
Sing it over me, speak it over me, let my
Right.
spirit receive it once again, because
Yes.
I'm struggling right now.
Right. Which
And
is ongoing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm always at that place, going back from time to time.
Right. So we've actually talked about this. I think this is really important because I have the same discipline, which I would call relational, but it started out as a discipline. Like it's having that intimate relationship with God. Like everything is an overflow that spills out from God to us and God within us. And our relationship with the Father, our relationship with the Son, the relationship with the power of the Holy Spirit, and building and cultivating those relationships. So it's the personal time, right?
Yes.
But then there's the secondary layer, and I think this is so important when we talk about women who lead, is that we need each other. So when I look at you guys, and I look at so many other women throughout the world, I'm like, you're not my competition.
Exactly.
You're my community. And,
Yes.
and when I empower you, it empowers me.
Yes.
And as women, we know that as women, when women are on the same page, it's super powerful, isn't it? But we also fight against, our own insecurities. But then also the insecurities of what happens often where we're competing with each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
So have you guys both encountered that as well? Valerie.
No, it doesn't
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
competition,
Yeah.
it seems to be a big thing with women in ministry. I'm not sure exactly why, but I just feel that if we could realize more that the fact that maybe someone is doing something that you might want to do, or it seems to be working for them,
Right.
should only be an encouragement that it can work for you.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it's
yeah.
happening for her, it can happen
Right,
for me.
exactly.
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah.
great for her, it can be great for me.
Right.
As opposed to, oh, that's the competition, I have to get higher.
Yeah.
You know, and beat her the next time. And what did she do? No, there's a uniqueness in personal expression. So
Right.
the way I express myself is different from how Anne expresses herself.
Right.
And the way Holy Spirit expresses himself through me is different from how he
Yes.
expresses himself through Anne. So it's beautiful when we embrace the difference
Yeah,
as opposed to seeing it as competition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what about for you, Anne?
Yeah, understanding that uniqueness that we carry. I definitely have sat in rooms and just thought, my goodness, they like look what they're doing and look who they are and look what they bring, and I'm just nothing, I'm just me, you know, and you find that you shrink in that space and your confidence shrinks and your voice is silenced, and actually it's just the enemy just having a bit of a
absolutely.
game with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned a lot about trying to recognize that quicker and just go, I'm not having that.
Right.
And I think some of the ground that you then take is, no, I know who I am and I know that I'm a child of God and I know what he said to me.
Right.
And it's unique to what he
Yeah.
said to me.
Yeah.
And so it's knowing that, isn't
Yeah.
it, I think?
And being secure in that, and being secure in what God's
it's-
called you to do, and not running. It's like you need to stay in your own lane.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we only get tripped up when we start looking at everybody else's race.
Big time.
And I need you to do well. You know, I want you to cheer me on. I think that of creating that culture with women is so very important.
Yes,
you know,
it
and especially in the coming years. Like this is not a competition. That we need to be for each other and encourage one another. And when you do well, I do well, because we're all just trying to do what God's asked us to do. So, what's one of the things, actually, Anne, where you have found, you know, kind of breaks that insecurity and kind of stepping into ministry? Like, what's an example of what you've been in where you've had to kind of step outside of those insecurities? And at the same time, it shows that you're part of this as well. It's not just, you know.
I think when women have reversed that and done the complete opposite, rather than competing and comparing, we've released and emboldened each other. That's been such a lesson to me to see that and then to try and model that to others. So, I mean, sorry to draw you into it, Christy, but when we've ministered together, way back now, it's probably been quite a long time ago, maybe even 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, is it?
And we took to the platform together, and I was hosting and you were speaking, and when we entered the ministry time, you went, right, come on, Anne, we're doing this together. And I literally felt like she'd thrown me into the deep water. And I just was like, I don't think I can. And you were like, no, you can. Come on, you can. And I think out of that, something amazing happened and shifted in me. It was like, okay, now I can tread there, and I can. And then I've then been able to say to my girlies around me at church, you know, no, come on, pray, come and lead, come and do that. And I think that that's released something amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the power of it, actually. That's the power of letting go and seeing other people thrive in it, and then you turning around and doing the exact same thing with all these other girls that are following you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome, actually. And Valerie, what about for you? Because you mentor actually quite a lot of young, so how would you kind of not allow competition to come in, but instead disciple and release and empower?
Actually doing what you did, which is giving the opportunity, giving people the opportunity to actually do what they can do.
Right.
You know, to do what they are called to do. Not just recognizing it, oh, they've got this gift, and oh yeah,
Right.
there, but they're not doing anything.
Right.
No, letting them get on with it, and then cheering them on, letting them know you can do this.
Yeah.
One of the challenges people usually have is knowing that what they have is valuable.
Yes.
So taking the time to let them know that I don't have what you have. You know, what you have is what you have.
Yeah,
that's
And
good.
so placing value on that and encouraging them and giving them the room to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's really encouraging, actually.
It's that kind of speak what you see thing,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Like over each other.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
is it not true, actually, that we need to be way more encouraged than people realize we need to be encouraged? Like we're basically all walking into everything a little bit insecure. I think if people aren't insecure or don't have any fear, I think that worries me more than people that are a little bit like, oh my gosh, Lord, please show up. Lord, please show up. Please, you got to come through. But we're all kind of walking in going, all right, if God doesn't come, this isn't going to work. And if God doesn't use me, then, you know what I mean? And if this turns out different, am I going to be okay with that? And but so having, exactly. So having some people around us that we build this culture of, no, man, I'm cheering you on, actually, Valerie. Like multiply, those disciples, empower women in London, and release them from all, to all parts of the world. Because that's the power of community. That's the power of the church.
Yes.
Better together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what about, would you say, in part of that? Because I think the letting go, I personally have found the letting go actually breaks off some of the fear and insecurity.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The enemy will tell you opposite. The enemy will tell you to hold on to this. You're never going to have a voice. You're never going to have a place. You're never going to have a platform. And the Lord's always saying, I want you to release. I want you to trust people. I want you to give them more than even what you were entrusted. It's always the opposite, isn't it? And so have you found that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just, as you were speaking then, I'm just reminded of Acts 12, because I've actually been speaking from there recently about Peter being led out. The angel leads him out of chains and sets him free from chains and leads him out past all these soldiers through this iron gate. And there's this, and then the angel goes. So there's this sense of like the angel comes for this intense time of letting go and being released into freedom, and then the angel leaves him to go to the house, and and it's just this. And I really felt the Lord was saying to me, yes, for those times where you really need me to come alongside, and my presence will increase to help you overcome that fear and that insecurity and that barrier, but you have to keep walking and keep stepping.
So Valerie, what would you actually say to somebody that's in leadership right now that has all these people under them, and they want to release them into whatever they feel God's called them to do? What would you actually say to them to help kind of just practically encourage them to disciple a bit more and to let go?
I would say invest in them, nurture them. Because if you invest in them, you can trust what's coming out. You can trust their character. You can trust that they're going through the process as well. You can trust that they're ready and stuff like that. So I feel actually investing some of your time, investing some of, whatever resources you have to help them makes it easier to release them. Because sometimes leaders, I think, are scared of releasing people who may not be ready. So take the time to help them
were we really ready? Were you really ready? I think back
we
when
never
I'm
know
like,
when
oh my
we're ready.
gosh, like I can't believe when I got trusted. I probably did so much damage.
I know.
I probably have to pray for so many people that I learned on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's just the invest in time to help them.
Yeah, what would you say to that, Anne?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we were sort of touching on, speak what you see in them, just sort of say, okay, I can see that you have carry that gift, and try, if you've got the ability to do it, give them the space to release it.
So it's like it's not just saying we believe in it, but we're actually going to release and we're going to give you the space to do it. This whole conversation is just about women leading has been so wonderful, you guys. I really appreciate it. Just kind of taking the lid off a bit, sharing a little bit of your own story, of your own journeys. And I know that so many people will be so encouraged. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I love
Thank
it.
you
for having us.
Thank you.